Hi, I'm Kristen and this is Scrap Fabric Love, and today I'm talking about 10 ways you can put names or really any words you like onto a quilt. So I'm going to run through probably the best known methods pretty quickly at the beginning because I don't use those ones very frequently anymore. And then I'm going to get on to some kind of more different fun methods and also just some easy ones that I really like that I think give a really good result on quilts. So method number one is machine embroidery. Many domestic machines have some sort of font inbuilt into them. I used this early on in my quilts for quilt labels. Obviously, the limitations of this method, if you're just using a domestic machine, are the size that you can make the letters. But if you have a proper embroidery machine that's got that whole setup going on, you might be able to make fairly large letters and make them look really professional. Top tips for using machine embroidery is to use some kind of stabilizer underneath. It can really help everything run through smoothly and make the letters come out nice and clearly. And also you can do as I didn't do in the examples I showed you and unpick the sort of joining stitches in between the letters. That obviously makes it look more professional, but I didn't know that was the thing to do when I was using this method. Number two is hand embroidery. So if you are a deft hand with a handheld needle, which I'm not really, you can of course stitch names and letters by hand using some embroidery floss. There's all sorts of embroidery transfers on the market. I think there's probably versions you can print yourself, but you can also buy pre-printed ones and you would iron it on, stitch where it's showing you, and then wash away or sometimes pull away depending on the product. But for me, hand embroidery just takes too long. I understand it's relaxing for a lot of people, and if it is for you, go for it because it looks awesome. But I just don't have the patience for it, so it's not a method I use a lot. So the third method, which you probably have also heard about, is fabric pens. So we buy all sorts of pens and pencils and things as quilters that we want to erase, like the water-soluble ones and the heat and the ones that disappear when you put your iron on them, all of those for mark making that we want to be temporary. But you can also buy pens that are not designed to be temporary, that are permanent. So you might have seen these for like putting labels in kids' clothing and things like that. And you can absolutely use those pens. So if you already have one of those at home, you can give it a try. My handwriting is not amazing. So when I've tried this method before, it looks like a child did it. So for me, this was not ideal, but it does work. So if you have those kind of pens, you just need to sort of stabilize your fabric somewhere. So maybe if you've got pattern weights or something else heavy, or if you want to just tape your fabric to your table or something like that, because the only thing that's difficult with this kind of method is when the fabric is shifting on you. And then of course, once you've written whatever you want to write, you would want to heat set that with an iron. So method 4 is the way that I've been able to use this method despite my ridiculous handwriting. So it's stencils. So I'm using this method as part of a special quilt I'm making for folk who joined my scrap club in the first month. So I'm adding their name to a founding members quilt. I'm putting their names on denim. So I taped the scrap onto my table with like a piece of paper underneath. And then I used micron pens. So this is kind of like an artist's pen. It's very fine tip, but it can be permanent on fabric if you heat set it. So I have been using a range of colors of these micron pens with my stencil. Of course, there's loads of different stencils on the market. I'll see what I can find to link to in the video description for you. But my best tip for these micron pens is to move your pen around a lot. So if you keep it sat in one place, it can bleed a little bit. But if you just keep going over quickly, then you get a good crisp look from the pen and the stencils. So obviously you can see, I'm sure, how much better that looks than my own handwriting. So I've been using that method. And as I said, heat setting it when I'm finished. Method 5 is printable fabric. So I have used this before and I use it a lot for quilt labels. So I like to put labels on my quilt binding but you can also use them for the more traditional labels on the back or in the corners or whatever. So it's just a printable fabric. You can buy it on Amazon and lots of different places, and I will put the link in the description. You need an inkjet printer to print with it. Ask me how I know. I've done it with other printers, doesn't work as well. You print it, you rinse it, let it dry, and then you can just use it like fabric. And it works really well. And you can sort of design really pretty labels or have a big font or whatever on your computer and put whatever you want basically on your quilt. Method number 6 is stamps. So again, this is one I've been doing for the founding members quilt. So this was one of the first methods that I landed on that I liked for the founding members quilt. So I already owned some stamps that look a bit like typewriter keys. So I was using those with a pad of Archival Ink. So this, I did some looking around, and this is the best type of ink for making it permanent.
So I found strangely that doing this on a soft surface like my pressing mat works better than doing it on a hard surface. I don't know if that's what other people find, but it's been working for me. So I've just been pressing pretty firmly. And then, of course, when I'm done, it needs to be heat set with an iron to make it permanent.
Another one that I've been loving, and again, it's for this same project that I've been working on, is using selvages. So I save all the selvage edges on my fabric. If you don't know what it is, it's the bit when you've bought a length of fabric and it's got the name of the fabric line, it's got who designed the fabric, it's usually got some other little markings to show you the colors that appear in the fabric, those. So I save all of those for various projects, but it's great for the project I'm using now because the letters are a very similar size to the stamps that I started with and now the stencils that I'm also using. So they can kind of be a similar size for the names to come out in my quilt.
So to do this, I cut out the big letters that were in the selvages that I had and then fused them with a double-sided fusible. As you can see, I've got cut-offs from when I was doing this earlier, but you basically end up with a sheet of letters that you can just pick and choose the ones you need. So I was cutting out the letters I needed to make the names for my Founders Members quilt. Now the Ruby Star Selvedge Edges, if you have those, they tend to have really big letters. Those are great ones to use, but I did find some others, and I'm going to save all of these with the fusible on the back for future projects. I found this method really fun. I understand it could be tedious in the way that I find hand embroidery tedious. This could be tedious as well because it's little tiny letters, but I just had so much fun with this. And once I had the name all cut out and the way I liked it, I had to take the little pieces of backing off of the fusible and then fuse it down in place. And then what I was doing was just stitching around each name with just a regular stitch length. And I wasn't going in between each individual letter. But of course, I'm making a wall hanging. So for my purposes, that'll do. But if you are using something that's going to get used more, laundered, all of that, maybe have a think about how much stitching you need to do to make it secure for your uses.
Number 8 is the AccuQuilt Alphabet Die. So some of you will know I have an AccuQuilt cutter and a whole bunch of dies. I'm kind of addicted to it. Anyway, I have the alphabet die. And with that, again, if you just put some double-sided fusible onto whatever fabric you want your letters to be, you can just cut out as many letters as you want using the die really, really simply. And you don't have to reverse anything. And your letters just come out crisp and nice and clean and ready to applique. So I've used this for quite a number of projects, including some reading cushions. I used it for a project at my kids' school. Can't show you that one because Scott basically was the name of the school that I used it for. This is great for like birthday banners because the size of the letters is quite big, and it's great for putting like kids' names on quilts and things like that. So that's a really good option if you have the AccuQuilt system, and I'll put the link to that in the description box. But if you don't have that system, or if you want letters that are a teeny bit smaller, but you still want that kind of crisp, finished fonty look. I don't know, is that a word? Fonty? Anyway, I hope you know what I mean. I have had to do a workaround previously. So I was going to use my AccuQuilt die for one of the Quiltmas quilts that I did a couple of years ago. I wanted it to say Merry Christmas inside a holly wreath, but I didn't measure ahead to see how big the holly wreath was compared to the AccuQuilt letters. Anyways, so I had to figure out how to do it in slightly smaller letters. So what I ended up doing was picking a font that I liked on my computer, writing Merry Christmas, and then printed it out and experimented with the font size to see what would fit where I wanted it to go.
Then using some double-sided fusible that has the paper on the back, so those kind of brands, I put the font that I had chosen face down onto my Caterpillar light mat and then traced on the paper side of the fusible, which means that when I fused the fabric onto the fusible and cut the letters out, I then had the letters the right way round to applique. So if you've done any kind of applique work before, you might be familiar with that kind of reverse process. So obviously it takes a little longer than just cutting out those AccuQuilt letters. But I think for a font that's a slightly different size, it turned out really well and I was pleased with it. If you want to see this process a little slower, I do have it in the Quiltmas video about this quilt, and I'll link to that in the video description for anyone who wants to see that.
Number 10, probably not for everyone's project, but it's working for mine, is letter beads. So I found a secondhand lot of someone destashing a whole bunch of the letter beads that you use for things like, I think they used to use them for hospital bracelets back in the day, and you might see kids with like name necklaces on them. And so I've been playing around using those to make some of the names for my founding members quilt. Again, similar size to the stamps and the Selvedges and the Stencils. So I've been just doing 3 stitches per bead with 2 strands of embroidery floss, and then kind of looping into the next bead and doing it that way. I'm sure there's other ways to stitch it, but anyway, that's how I've been doing it. And again, this will work for me because it's for a wall quilt, but if it was something that was going through a wash a lot or was being given to a child, I'm not sure the beads would be the top method I would recommend. But I do think they do look kind of cute, and they still have that kind of ransomy note effect that the Selvedge version had as well. I'm sure you can think of all sorts of other methods that I didn't mention.
You'll actually find a few more methods on the blog post about this topic on my website, scrapfabriclove.com. You can also go there to find out about Scrap Club that I mentioned, as well as to sign up for my free patterns and my weekly newsletter.
I am going to be trying needle punching with some yarn soon as part of this project, not for the little tiny names, but for something a bit bigger on the quilt. So we'll see how that turns out. There might be a video about that, there might not. But I'm sure there are other methods that you can think of for adding names to quilts or to fabric, and I would love to hear about them in the comments if you do. If you like videos like this and you've not already subscribed, I hope you'll consider it. I generally do scrap quilts on this channel. I don't follow a lot of quilting rules either on the channel or inside Scrap Club, which is my online quilt group where we meet on Zoom once a month and we do group quilts and just lots of collaborative stuff. It's a totally kind of no judgment, beginner friendly space, which is exactly what the channel is as well. So if that's up your street, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And if you are looking for your quilty people, do have a look at the link in the description box. Maybe Scrap Club would be for you too. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found a method of putting a name on a quilt that's going to work for your project. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Bye.